Hey everybody, Josh the Retro Gamer here. So we've got part 2 now. I'm going to talk to you in part 2 about games that I think will be on the Nintendo 64 Classic or the Nintendo 64 Mini if Nintendo can't get other people, other developers and stuff on board to license out the characters and all of that. So these are just going to be things that Nintendo came out with. Nintendo first party and either produced or developed, and ones that I'm pretty sure that they still own. Everything involved, so it wouldn't be a problem for them to just throw it on the Classic. Because I've had a few people say, like, well, is there even enough titles from Nintendo for them to actually do that? And I think that there is, actually, to do. I came up with a list of 18 plus 1, essentially. I'm going to throw out a couple others, too, just some other ones to kind of ruminate on, think about in your head. But these are the ones that I think will definitely be on there. Now, some of them are going to be repeats of my part 1, so I talked more about them in part 1, so I'm only going to kind of quickly show them and then I'm going to move on. But just so you kind of get an idea, these are the ones that I think probably won't happen, because I think they're going to get other people to play nice and they're going to have a bunch of other games on there. But some of these are just great first-party titles I'm pretty sure Nintendo still owns, and I think they're going to be on there. Check my facts. If there are any of these that you're like, hey, those Nintendo doesn't own that anymore, let me know down in the comments, because honestly, I'd like to know more. And I feel like I researched these well enough to be pretty confident, but I'm always open to, hey, you're wrong about that. So here we go. So a couple of the ones that are no surprise: Super Mario 64, definitely one that's going to be on there. I've got that one on all 3 of the videos that I'm doing. It's going to show up, I'm pretty sure. Mario Kart 64, another one I think is definitely going to show up regardless of what they're able to get or whatever. It's just a huge fan favorite, one that a ton of people know. Talked about it a lot in part 1. I think that one's going to be on there. Next, Star Fox 64, another great Nintendo title. Huge fan, great game. Had Star Fox on Super Nintendo Classic. I don't see why they wouldn't have it on a system where they can only have Nintendo stuff. Next, Kirby Crystal Shards. Also a great game. Talked about that one a little bit in part 1. That's all the boxes that I have. So now we're going to go into some cartridges. 1080. Got to have a good sports title on there. We've got the Winter Olympics happening right now. I think that's a good one. That'd be a good sports title that was a ton of fun back in the day. Still a lot of fun. Pokemon Stadium 2. They might do Pokemon Stadium 1 or Pokemon Stadium 2, or maybe both. I talked about that in part 1. I think one of those is going to show up, especially as big as Pokemon has been recently, and everybody just loves Pokemon on the Nintendo, so I think that one's going to be around. Continuing on, Paper Mario, another great first-party title that I think they're going to have on there. Again, I'm talking about ones that, these are only Nintendo umbrella ones, but I think that's going to show up. Next, we've got Super Smash Brothers. This one I was hesitant to include because I know there are some other characters on here that I'm not 100% sure that Nintendo owns or that they'd be able to use. So this one may be kind of borderline. So somebody else that knows, let me know what you think. If the characters on here, if there are any that probably wouldn't branch out. I'm trying to remember who all might be on here that wasn't. Like Pokemon characters and stuff. I think most of the ones they had on here were all Nintendo IPs, but there might be a couple that are like, oh, that character isn't actually owned by Nintendo. So that one could be kind of shaky at best, but I think it'll be on there. I think both the Zeldas are going to make an appearance. I said that in part 1 as well, so spoiler, you should have already watched part 1, but I think they're both going to be on there because it just makes sense. Zelda's huge right now. Everybody's loving Zelda. I think those are going to show up regardless of what licensing they get. Some of these ones I'm about to talk about are ones that I didn't include on part 1, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time on them. And these would be great to have also on the system, but I tried to keep it trimmed down to what I thought they were absolutely going to go for. So one of those is Excitebike 64. If they're restricted to only what they have, I think this is a good one to throw on the system. It's a lot of fun. They had the original Excitebike on the NES, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the game. The next one is Wave Race 64. This is a really fun game. If you haven't played it, you should pick it up. It really showcases how great the Nintendo 64 is. It does a really good job of that. Really good graphics, great music and sound effects and everything, and it's just a lot of fun. So That one I think, and I think this is one that they could potentially include on the release too. I didn't talk about it in part 1, but I think that they could do that one. So that's another one that I would throw out there. Pokemon Snap. I didn't talk about this one in part 1 either. I would love it if it was on the system. I think it's a little bit more obscure and maybe not have as many people that would be on board for it, but I loved it. I mean, it was a ton of fun. I wish it was multiplayer, but it was still a great game, and there were a lot of people that played it and a lot of people that enjoyed it. It was a very nice, easygoing, sit back, relax, play Pokemon Snap, try to get some pictures of these crazy, awesome, rare Pokemon. I mean, now you can just play Pokemon Go and take a screenshot, but that was a lot of fun. So, Pilotwings 64. This was a launch title, just like Super Mario 64. I don't think it's going to make it, like I didn't have it in part 1 because I don't think it's going to make it onto the final release. It might. It's one of those that could kind of go either way. But I don't really see it being on there just because there's so many other great titles. And if they kind of restrict how many they put on there like they did with the Super Nintendo, I could see them trimming it down a little bit and maybe not having this one on there. But if they have to do a system without anybody else, this is a great one to put on there. So there you go. There's an option for them. Another one, Mario Golf. Talked about this in part 1. There's 3 games that I fit more into the like puzzle genre and the, well, Dr. Mario and then Mario Golf, Mario Tennis. I think Mario Golf, Mario Tennis could definitely make it onto the one that actually gets released. I talked about them in part 1. I think they 100% would make it onto if Nintendo couldn't use anybody else's. That really restricts what they can do sports-wise. So I think that this one will probably make it on there. And I toyed with Ready to Rumble boxing for part 1 as well. I don't know, even if they got the licensing, if they'd throw that on there. But I thought about that one too. But anyway, so probably golf and tennis, and also maybe Dr. Mario. I don't have the cart to show you, but I think Dr. Mario would be one on this one that they would have more than likely, especially if they could only use their stuff. Next, I talked about these a little bit on part 1, Mario Party 2 and 3. They'd have one of those on there most likely. They might end up, if they didn't get to use anybody else's stuff, they might end up having to put both of them on there just to kind of fill in some holes, if you want to say that. You know, because depending on how big they want the library to be on the system when it launches, they may want to have a couple of options for several different games. Lastly, F-Zero X, great game. I think it's going to make it on there regardless. I've got it on all 3 of my videos and all 3 of my lists, so I think it's going to be on there. Plus one, though, that I wanted to say that they could do is Animal Crossing. Animal Crossing came out over in Japan, but it didn't come out in over here in the States. I guess because there just wasn't an English translation, or there wasn't one done for it. As far as I know, that's all that really needed to happen. But they did release an Animal Crossing with an English translation on the Wii Shop, or the Wii U on the Virtual Store, I think. So maybe they could just throw that one on there. I could see that one being an easy +1 for them because they've probably already done all the work, kind of like they did with Star Fox 2. They already had all the work done. So I could see them throwing it on there. So there you go. I hope that wasn't too boring. I just thought it was funny, and it would be fun to go through and think of only Nintendo games. If they didn't get anybody else to contribute, all of those games are very solid games and can still help them put out a system a lot of people would recognize with a lot of games that people would play, and there wouldn't be any problems. So that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments, and then we're going to go to part 3. And part 3 is my miracle list, and these are the ones that I would love for all of these games to be on there. I don't think that they'll all make it on there, but I would love for them all to be on there. So a lot of them are duplicates, so I'm just going to mention the duplicates real quickly, but I'm more going to talk about the specific ones I'm adding in addition to what I had in part 1. I'm going to be adding and changing around a little bit what I had in part 1. So check out part 3.